Hello again, I'm your internet dad, sharing life lessons I offered my own sons. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what we're offering. Come out twice a week. The title of today's talk is Sunk Costs and Mountain Moonshine. We'll explain how sunk costs can really sink you. Now, when I talk about sunk costs, it's slightly different from the other discussions I've had. For example, in my ostrich riding video, I was arguing for you to stop when it was obvious that what you were doing was impossible. I also argued in my grizzly bear video that confirmation bias can ruin your life when you continually get evidence that you're going in the wrong direction, but you choose to ignore it. Now, a sunk cost trap is something slightly different because it involves an investment, a business, a trip, or what have you, where you attach value to the time and effort you've expended to get to this point. It's a trap because that may color your decision as to whether to continue to do this, when in fact you should drop back. There's no value whatsoever in those sunk costs. In fact, it's worse because it's costing you more money. Many years ago, I rented a car in Atlanta, Georgia, to drive north to the mountains to see where that great classic movie Deliverance was shot. And it was a very beautiful and verdant area, but in the mountains there weren't a lot of houses around. I was on a very good road, and suddenly I come across a sign that says road closed. There were no men and there was no equipment around, but the road had been going in the right direction. So I thought about it for a bit, and I drove round the stop sign, or the road closed sign. Now, I'd invested maybe 10 or 15 minutes in a perfectly good road, and I didn't want to retrace my steps. Good example of sunk costs. I continued to drive on this good but deserted road for several more miles until I came to another road closed sign, which was a little bit more forceful because there was a large pile of dirt behind the road closed sign. We were in the middle of a green field, and that's where the road stopped. Here again, I had sunk costs more than I had before, but obviously I valued them and I decided to continue. So I drove over the pile of dirt and started down the hill on the other side. And funnily enough, I noticed a shack off to the left with smoke coming out of the chimney. And I was curious at the time why on earth it was there. There were no other buildings for miles that I could see. But I continued to drive down the hill, and that's when I saw the river. Now, as best as I could find out, the river was about 30 yards wide, and it looked like it wasn't more than 18 inches to 2 feet deep, although you couldn't really tell that. Now, here was another example, sunk costs. Gone to all this effort, I should really turn around and go back because of all that time and value. But it was a really dumb thing to do, to try and continue. So I drove the car back up the hill, about 100 yards or so, turned around, and I came down the hill at speed. I think I hit the river at about 20 miles per hour. There was a huge gush of water and red Georgia mud. The car juddered and shuddered and stumbled, but amazingly, it made the far bank, but not very far. Got up the bank about 20 feet, and it died. Couldn't get it restarted at all. Middle of nowhere. But along comes a Jeep with 4 local guys, and what I learned later, that that shack was actually their moonshine still. And obviously they were a bit on the suspicious side, but when it was so obvious that I was a tourist, they very much relaxed. I certainly wasn't federal revenue or whatever. And they towed my car into the next town where it was repaired, and the next day everything was okay. I returned it to the rental company, but before that I obviously went to a car wash, lest it be suspicious. Let's reflect on this as a concept of sunk costs. There were a number of occasions there where I attached value to time and gasoline expended that really was not relevant if this was going nowhere. My sunk costs began to mount, but so did my resolution to continue going. And I could have, without a lot of luck and those moonshiners, ended up with a truly sunk car in the middle of a river, in the middle of nowhere. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank those moonshiners for the tow, which helped me, and also for their later offer to supply me with more moonshine, because I left with 2 mason jars in my suitcase, but they reckoned I probably would have run out of it in a couple of months, and their promise was that they could send it anywhere in the United States that had a Greyhound bus service. But thinking of federal regulations, I never went that far. So for the rest of you who are not going to meet moonshiners or try to cross a river in a rental car, just remember those sunk costs are worth 0 if the course of action is wrong. In fact, they're worth less than 0, because the more you persist, the more those sunk costs mount, and sadly, the more convinced you may be to continue. So avoid the sunk cost trap, add it all up, and decide to go in a different direction. Good luck. Till next time.